Fight Mike here. Today we're going to be doing the full predictions and breakdown for UFC Noche taking place this weekend, headlined by Diego Lopes and Jean Silva. I'm going to be making a prediction on every single fight on the card, and if you're looking for a breakdown on a specific fight, there's going to be timestamps in the description. Starting off with the early prelim opener, though, we got Rodrigo Sezinando versus Daniil Donchenko. This is for the Ultimate Fighter winner. This was originally scheduled for, I want to say, UFC 318, but it got moved back because I believe it was Daniil Donchenko that got injured. But I'm going to be going with Daniil Donchenko to win this one by decision. I think Sezinando will have some success early, but Daniil is gritty, he's powerful, he'll cheat if he needs to, and he's probably a little bit better and cleaner on the feet than Sezinando, so I think he's going to be able to get it done by decision. Moving on to the next one, we've got Montserrat Rendon versus Alice Pereira. I'm going to be going with Alice Pereira by 29-28 decision. I do think that Rendon has a good shot at winning this if she can start shooting takedowns early and landing those takedowns. But Alice Pereira, who, keep in mind, is not Alex Pereira's sister, is a much cleaner striker on the feet. She's got a great straight left, a good jab. I think that she's just going to be able to out-damage Rendon to a 29-28 decision. I think Rendon will have some success in the grappling, but she's not going to be able to do anything on the feet, and she's not going to be able to win it by decision because she's going to do no damage. Moving on to the next one, we've got Alessandro Costa versus Alden Coria. I'm going to be going with Alessandro Costa to win this one by decision. I was considering picking the KO, but I think that Alden's going to be durable enough. He's never been KO'd across his career. He's been hit clean quite a few times as well. But at this point in Alessandro's career, he's going to be too much for Alden. I think maybe in Costa's first UFC fight, Alden would put up a scrap and make it a hard fight, but we've seen Alessandro come up against some really good competition, and he's not been blown out of the water by any of them. Whenever he goes back down in competition as well, he dominates the opponents, and in his first UFC fight ever, he was fighting Amir Albazi, and then he got a win over Jimmy Flick after then finishing Jimmy Flick. And then he had a decision loss to Steve Erceg. Very, very close fight, though. And then a comeback win where he dominated and finished Kevin Borhartz. So I think this is another one of these fights where it's a step down of competition from the Steve Ercegs and from the Amir Albazis. And he's going to be able to get Alden Coria done by decision. But one thing I will say is I do think that Coria is better than Jimmy Flick and Kevin Borjas. I've seen a couple of his regional fights and he follows a very good game plan. He actually also trains with Joshua Van, and he may be absorbing some of that sort of championship level aura, but I just think that Alessandro is going to be too much for him at the moment. He has some really nasty body shots, especially for the flyweight division. I think he probably has the best body shots in flyweight, especially punches to the body. He's really powerful on the feet as well. He's got fantastic leg kicks. He was almost finishing Jimmy Flick by leg kicks. And he's a very technically sound fighter with his hooks. He's got great takedown defense, and the only drawback to him is he does tend to rush some positions in the grappling. But for Alden, he doesn't really feint his way in. I think he's going to get caught with some nasty hooks and a lot of body shots. And he loads up and throws when he throws, he's a lot wider with his shots than Alessandro Costa. And he also seems to prefer to fight at a much slower pace than Costa does. And he does have, although Alden does have decent head movement and defense, I think that Alessandro is still going to be able to outland him, especially, I keep saying, to the body, but because Alden's got such good head movement, I think Alessandro is going to realize that if he just digs these hooks to the body, he'll be able to bring that head movement down, or he'll be able to bring the hands down to block the body shots that he's throwing in, because they are really, really nasty. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Zachary Reese versus Sedriques Dumas. It's sad to say, but I genuinely think Sedriques Dumas is one of the worst two fighters in the UFC. And spoiler, the other one is on the card. Probably would have preferred to see a fight between those two. But I don't know why Sedriques is in the UFC. Before his Contender Series opportunity, he was beating opponents with 1-2 records or one fight in total. And there's not really any part of his game that I can point to and say, oh, that'll be an issue for Zachary Reese, because Dumas' best weapon is his grappling and submissions, but that's only worked against the bottom level guys. His win in the Contender Series was his best win, where he beat a pretty decent opponent by guillotine 50 seconds in. But then the only other people he's grappled were the bottom feeder level opponents, the Cody Brundages of the division, the Dennis Talulins, the Abu Azayatars. And when he beats those guys, it's by smudge grappling decision with no damage. even when he was booked against Jackson McVeigh, the guy who was, I think he was only 6-0, and he came in against Bruno Ferreira at UFC 317 or 318. When he was booked against Jackson McVeigh, I was picking McVeigh to submit Sedriques Dumas, even with the massive, deficiency in experience. He only had 6 fights in total. But in this fight against Zachary Reese, whatever realm this fight takes place in, Reese is going to win every point of the fight. I said this last time Sedriques was booked to fight, but he has more charges than fights since joining the UFC, so I just can't think that he's taking his career seriously in any way, shape, or form. And if his criminal career seems to be taking the front foot of his earning potential, it just seems that he's not really taking his fighting career seriously at all. He really can't be doing all of these home invasions whilst going into training and really trying his best. I mean, you're going to get gassed out running away from home invasions, so I don't think he's recovering well. I don't think he had a bunch of drug charges as well. He's just not doing well, and I don't think that he's going to be able to have a shot at winning this fight. Because on the feet, he is the most reactive fighter on the roster. You feint at him and he flings his body across the octagon. If you watch any fight of his, especially the Mikhail Oleksiejczuk fight, he genuinely flies across the octagon as soon as you do a little jab feint or a head feint coming in. But usually Sedriques does all right. I say that with a grain of salt. He doesn't really do well, but he does all right against shorter opponents because he's harder to punish all the jittering he does. But against a huge and powerful Zachary Reese, he's not going to have the length advantage, and he's not going to have that same luxury of being able to jitterbug his way around the octagon. Because when Sedriques bites on feints and moves back covering up, Reese will be able to get the takedown whilst he's doing that, or he's going to be able to land a good shot over the top and either get a ground and pound TKO or submission in round 1. I will probably lean the submission because Sedriques has been KO'd a couple of his last fights, especially on the ground. So he might just lift his neck up and give up the sub. Moving on to the next fight, which is Jesus Aguilar versus Luis Gurule. I'm going to be picking Jesus Aguilar in this fight. He does worry me a little bit in his fights. He does have very iffy fight IQ. Against Rafael Estevam, I think that was in his last fight. In round 3, he had him hurt and he was 2 rounds down. And he was just clinching and shooting after getting out-wrestled for the first 2 rounds. So it was a really weird look for him. But Jesus has a really nice jab. He's got great takedown defense and it gets better as the fight goes along. And he's a very good nail when he needs to. He was put into very bad positions by Stuart Nicol. And he was able to reverse the position and instantly get a guillotine finish after a couple of minutes of having Stuart Nicol on his back. And I will say, this is unrelated, I do actually really like Jesus Aguilar as a person, just because he's shown really good sportsmanship against Stuart Nicol and Shannon Ross. He choked Stuart Nicol out cold, and his first response was to go to the legs and try to lift him up to bring back the oxygen into his brain. And then for Shannon Ross, he knocked him out instantly into the fight with an overhand right and instantly was trying to bring him back to life. So I do actually like Jesus Aguilar, but he's got a fantastic guillotine. I think he's got probably one of the 4 or 5 submissions by guillotine in his career. But he's coming up against a Luis Gurule, who's a very difficult opponent. He's got great timing on the takedowns. He's very patient on the feet, sometimes a little too patient. But he's looked a little bit slow on the feet, especially in his last bout against Ode Osborne. You could see his striking's a little bit underdeveloped. He doesn't have the best range management and he doesn't feint his way in. He also kicks in elbow range consistently. And I don't think that that's going to bode well with him against Jesus Aguilar. I think Jesus is going to be able to drop him with a straight right as he's going for one of those kicks. And on the ground, I think Jesus is probably a little bit more controlled. He's a little bit better in the positions. And whilst Gurule can control Aguilar like Rafael Estevam did, I don't think he's got the same high-level jiu-jitsu that Rafael Estevam has shown throughout his career. I even think that Aguilar has a shot at submitting Gurule off bottom with a guillotine or with some sort of submission or front choke. But Aguilar just can't be complacent if it hits the mat, and I think he will get this one done by decision. Moving on to the next fight that we've got, Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos. I'm going to be picking Tatiana Suarez to get this one done. Just because she had a bad performance against Zhang Weili, the champion of strawweight and one of the strawweight goats, doesn't mean she's going to lose this fight. I think she's going to come in with this one with a chip on her shoulder. She went from fighting a title fight to being on the prelims of a fight night. So she's going to go out there with a lot of determination. And I think she's going to be able to out-wrestle Amanda Lemos. We've seen Lemos get out-wrestled constantly throughout his career, but throughout her career, I do think her wrestling defense has gotten a little bit better, but it's not going to be the same level of Zhang Weili's, so she's going to be much less athletic, a little bit older. She's 38 years old, and historically, having never had good takedown defense isn't going to bode well against someone like Tatiana Suarez, who's got all the grappling credentials, even though it's not proven as much in the UFC. But Amanda Lemos is not nearly as fast as Tatiana Suarez. She's not nearly as athletic. Her takedown defense has never been as good. And on the feet, although she's quite powerful, she's probably not going to be slick enough to be able to outland Suarez if you include the takedown threat from Tatiana Suarez. So I think Suarez is going to be able to get down Lemos in every single round. I think Lemos is going to be able to survive positions. She's going to do a little bit better than she did against Verna Jandiroba. But I think Suarez is going to be able to get a 30-27 win in this fight. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Claudio Puelles versus Joaquim Silva. This is really, really tough to predict, and it's mostly not due to the style. If this was 2 years ago, I'm picking Joaquim Silva by KO. But both of these guys have been super inactive for a very, very, very long time. Puelles has been out for 19 months, and Joaquim's been out for 16 months. This is the worst type of fight to predict, because usually when guys have been out for this long, I make it a point to pick against them just due to ring rust and the fact that they're never as good as they were when they've been out for that long. But when they've both been out for this long, it's super hard to pick because you don't know who's going to be the fresher fighter out there. Especially since we don't know why Joaquim Silva's been out for so long. We know Puelles has been out since his fight with Ferreira because he had a broken hand. But Joaquim was supposed to fight Rafa Garcia in March but pulled out due to unknown reasons. So it's really, really difficult to tell why Joaquim Silva pulled out. If it's due to like a back injury or like a neck injury or something like that, I would be leaning towards Claudio Puelles. But I really don't know now. Puelles had a really good performance against Ferreira in, I think it was like March last year. But that was at altitude, and Ziam does have a style and frame that makes him a little bit easier to take down. And Puelles really did no damage to Ferreira throughout the entire fight. I think he landed under 10 significant strikes in the fight. But when I'm looking at Joaquim Silva, I'm looking at a guy who doesn't really ever do enough to win. If you remember his fight against the guy that just beat Edson Barboza, I'm drawing a blank on the name, Drakkar Klose. It really was a nothing fest where neither guy did anything on the feet, neither really did anything to try and win the fight. And Joaquim Silva has had this problem time and time again in his career. He hurt a guy like, what's his name, Arman Tsarukyan really badly and wasn't able to follow up and finish the job. He brought Clay Guida to a decision, which is always a bad look. Losing to Ricky Glenn by punches, losing to Nasrat Hakparast, losing to Vince Pichel. It's a really hard one to pick. I actually hate this prediction. Oh, I don't know, man. I was going to pick Joaquim Silva, and I'm still going to pick him. I think he's going to get it done by KO. I just don't see Claudio Puelles really improving in the 19 months he's been off. He's already a guy where he's got very good grappling, and that's going to keep improving whilst he's had time off. But that striking, which has always been his weakness, is not going to improve. Oh, I hate that he has good takedown, though. Claudio Puelles actually has comically good takedowns, and he's very good with timing, but I still think that Joaquim Silva is going to be able to get it done. I could see Joaquim Silva getting knee barred, but I think he's going to be able to get ground and pound TKO over Claudio Puelles in this fight. Moving on to the next one. We got Jose Medina versus Dusko Todorovic. I'm going to be going with Dusko Todorovic to win this one, and you know how I said that Sedriques Dumas is one of the worst fighters in the UFC? Jose Medina is the other worst fighter. Jose, I'm sure, would demolish guys on the regional scene, and before you say it in the comments, Jose Medina is smoking me out cold with one punch, but he's yet to show me anything in the UFC to make me want to pick him. He's one of those Contender Series guys that gets signed off a loss and then gets destroyed in the UFC, and he's coming up against a bit of a vet in Dusko Todorovic. Both of these guys are on 3-fight losing streaks, but Dusko has shown skills that he can win fights in the UFC. He had a close fight against Zachary Reese last time out, and he's shown that he can win fights, especially earlier on in his UFC career. So he's going to be able to get this one done by decision in this fight. Moving on to the next one, we've got Santiago Luna versus Quang Le. I'm going to be going with Santiago Luna by KO. I was picking Quang Le as the fight got announced, and he does have a very good shot at winning this fight. He's much more experienced. He's likely the better grappler out of the two. And if he wins, it's going to be by like smudge decision or submission. But watching his fights on the feet, Santiago Luna should be able to have a field day with Quang Le. Quang Le is not very fast on the feet. He's not very durable either. And he doesn't really have the most power. And even though Santiago Luna is very inexperienced and really doesn't have the same wealth of experience as Quang Le, hasn't fought the long Zhaos of the division, but Santiago Luna is very good. He doesn't really overthrow many of his shots, and he's got real one-shot KO power. And to think in round one, Quang Le is probably going to be able to get a couple of takedowns, but I think he's going to have to work really, really hard for them, because I've seen Santiago Luna use takedowns offensively. Whilst that doesn't mean he's going to be any good off his back, I do think that it means that he's going to be somewhat aware of what Quang Le is going to be able to do to him, and I think he's going to be able to KO him in round two, because I think Quang Le is going to get gassed out after shooting so many takedown attempts on him. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Alexander Hernandez versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. This is another one that's a very difficult one to pick, because there was a time where, and the time is kind of now, where Carlos Diego Ferreira is the guy for MMA YouTube. Everyone talks about him as being like the most criminally underrated fighter in the UFC. But he's getting so much hype, and I actually think he's a little overrated at this point. I'm not saying that he's a bad fighter or that this is going to be a loss for him, but people talk about CLD like he's the most dangerous fighter on the feet, and you're cooked once you go to the floor with him. I disagree. I think he's fantastic on the ground. He can pretzel you up and submit you. But on the feet, he doesn't always look so sharp. He gets caught a lot at the end of people's punches. He doesn't really move his head too much. He's got that, and I don't think he trains at shooter box, but I'm going to actually check that. But he's got that shooter box type style where he does get caught quite a lot when he is quite upright. And when he's on one leg, he's a very defensively awkward fighter. He doesn't always have the high guard and the really good defense. I'm going to be checking what gym he trains out of. No, he fights out of Texas, but he still has that sort of like Charles Oliveira type style on the feet. But I think that all the time away for CLD and the age, I think is going to catch up to him in this fight. He's been fighting around one time per year, and although he had a good performance against Mateusz Raumbetsky last May, this is a short notice fight. He got to prepare for Rebecca. And I can't imagine he's going to be in as good shape as Alexander Hernandez, because Hernandez fought 1 month ago to the day. I really don't know who to pick though, because on one hand I can see CLD out-grappling him, but I can also see the slower Carlos Diego Ferreira get flatline KO'd by Alexander Hernandez. It is the year of the Young though. It's a very, very close fight between the two of them. Oh, I hate predicting these ones, but I think I'm going to be able to go with Alexander Hernandez by decision in this one. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I wanted to pick Stoltzfus just because of how bad Gastelum had looked recently, and I am still really considering it. But looking at Gastelum's frame and what he's looked like in his last few fights, compared to how Stoltzfus shows up every single time, Stoltzfus every time shows up in very muscular shape. He's got good cardio every time. He's going to have the wrestling advantage in this one. But the one drawback is that he's a victim on the feet every single time. He's not ridiculously fast. He's not very powerful. He doesn't have very many layers to his striking. And although that can be enough to deal with Kelvin Gastelum, I think that Kelvin's got enough takedown defense, enough natural skill to get it done against Dustin Stoltzfus, just because even though Stoltzfus has good timing on his takedowns, I don't think he's got enough finishing potential. He's not a Sean Brady. He's not going to be able to submit Kelvin Gastelum. He very well could submit him, but I don't think he will submit him, and he's definitely not going to be able to ground and pound TKO him or finish him on the feet. I can see Kelvin getting taken down every single round, but I can see him getting back up. I can see him having a little bit better cardio than he does at welterweight. And I think that he's going to be able to put some damage on Dustin Stoltzfus, and I think that's going to be the big difference maker in the fight. Although he could submit Kelvin, Dustin Stoltzfus can, he doesn't really push for submissions that regularly. So I think that Kelvin's going to be able to win an extremely, extremely close decision where people are like, okay, Kelvin, just retire off the win. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Rafa Garcia versus Jared Gordon. I'm going to be going with Jared Gordon in this one. I think he should get a decision win. The reason is, apart from durability, I don't see an aspect of the fight where Rafa Garcia is better than Jared Gordon. If I'm looking at the striking, I think Gordon's cleaner. If the wrestling, I think Rafa Garcia's got it, and the submission, Rafa's probably got it. But I think Gordon's defensive wrestling is better than Rafa's offensive wrestling. But one of the biggest signs to me that Gordon's going to win this is the level of competition that he's facing. He's getting robbed against guys like Nasrat Haqparast, who are on a 5-fight winning streak, or against Paddy Pimblett, who's now ranked and on like a 7-fight winning streak. Whereas Rafa Garcia is going on in a razor-close decision with a 43-year-old Vince Pichel, and a decision against a 43-year-old Clay Guida straight out of the nursing home. So I'm confident that any version of Guida that fought Rafa Garcia would get finished in round 1 against Jared Gordon. The same thing with Vince Pichel. Maybe not finished because Vince is very, very durable. But I think that Jared Gordon schools both Clay Guida. And even then, last time out, Jared Gordon got a flatline KO over Thiago Moises, and people make fun of Thiago Moises for being overrated. I would pick Thiago Moises to finish both Vince Pichel and Clay Guida by the second round by submission. That's the thing. I don't think Rafa Garcia has been fighting these guys that really make me impressed by his performances, especially since he's never finishing them. And for me, Rafa Garcia pick never makes sense, especially since Gordon's worst attribute is his chin. But Rafa Garcia has never been a finisher. He's gotten 1 KO across his entire career, and he's really not a finisher in any facet. So I'm going to be going with Jared Gordon to get this one done by unanimous decision. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Rob Font versus David Martinez. I think Rob Font's got to get this one done. Unless overnight Rob Font has become like unbelievably washed, he should beat David Martinez. And it's not like David's a very bad fighter. He's very skilled, but he's just very green, and you can tell. The one thing about David is he never feints his way in. He only ever feints the level change. And whilst he's very explosive and has good timing, that's not going to be enough for Rob Font. We've seen guys like Gene Matsumoto, who has better timing and is even more explosive with the feints, with the experience. He was still not able to get it done against Rob Font, and I think he's a much better version of David Martinez than David Martinez is. And although Rob has had some losses recently, he's still a technically great fighter, and he's schooling Gene Matsumoto. He's schooling the guy that Vinicius Oliveira just beat, Kyler Phillips. And the thing is that he's got very good footwork, and he's deceptively fast for his age. And although David Martinez is very explosive, I don't think he's that much faster than Rob Font. And I think that skill in the footwork of Font is going to be able to keep him away from all the slick punches of David Martinez. And although David's had some good performances against guys like Simon Oliveira, he's KOing guys that aren't nearly as good as the grizzled vet of Rob Font. And the thing is that even though that performance against Simon Oliveira was impressive, you really can't take anything from it, because Simon Oliveira enters range like Chase Hooper does. Like, chin forward, looking like a victim, very not powerful, and he came into range without fainting. That's not what Rob Font's going to do. Rob Font can get hurt at different points, but I think he's going to be able to outland and outstrike David Martinez to an easy decision, maybe even a late round 3 finish. But I think he's going to be able to outskill David Martinez in every facet of the fight. I think he's got too much layers to his striking. He feints his way in, very active on the feet. He throws a lot. If he can kick a lot, that would bode well for him. He has been known in the past to just start boxing with his opponents, so I don't think he really should be boxing strictly with David Martinez, but I think he's going to be able to get it done by decision. Maybe, actually no, I'm going to go with late rounds 3 TKO up against the fence. Now moving on to the main event, we've got Diego Lopes versus Gene Silva. I've done a full breakdown of this fight in another video on the channel. I'll link that one in the description below, but I'm going to be going with Gene Silva in this one, and it's mainly just because of the stylistic matchup of this. I think the matchup definitely favors Gene Silva. Diego Lopes sort of has that like blockhead first type style where he doesn't really slip and rip. He kind of just eats 1 to 2 shots and tries to deliver 3 or 4 back of his own with more power than yours. But the thing is that may work well against strikers who aren't as elusive as a Volkanovski or as a Gene Silva. But in this fight, I think that he's going to get punished, and punished badly for that. Because the thing is about Diego Lopes is that he's always moving forward, and he doesn't really stop moving forward, and he's never like a backward mover, and he's not the most elusive with his movement either. Gene Silva is going to be able to read that like a book. He's a very smart guy, even if you don't think so. He is very smart, and he's got insane reaction speed. So what I think is going to be going down, I think early on in this fight, Diego Lopes is going to be really pushing Gene Silva backwards. I think Gene Silva is not going to open up very early. I think he's not going to show his hand. I think he's going to attack the body a lot early. I think he's going to throw a lot of straights to the body, maybe a couple of twos to the body, maybe a counter left hook to the body as Diego Lopes goes for a straight shot. I can see Gene Silva really, really working the body early, because the thing is about Diego Lopes' blockhead first style is that if he gets comfortable, he's going to get smoked out cold at some point, because the thing is that he doesn't really move his head offensively or defensively. So Gene Silva is going to be able to predict the entire time when Lopes is going to be able to move forward and throw punches. So Gene Silva, with the amazing defense and the amazing counter ability that he has, I think he's going to be able to slip inside or outside of Diego Lopes' too and just land a counter hook over the top, and I think it's going to be very devastating the way he gets it done. The thing is that Gene Silva, I think he might be an underdog by this time, just because the Fighting Nerds losing last week, and I'm actually going to check that very quickly, whether Gene Silva is an underdog. No, Gene Silva is still the favorite. I think people see stylistically that Gene Silva is difficult for Diego Lopes to unpack, just because when you have that style of eat one, give one, you always have the chance of coming up against someone with more power than you, and they just shut you off. If you remember the recent fight where I saw this take place, it was Hyder Emil versus Jose Delgado, where Hyder Emil comes forward every single fight. I don't think he's ever been KO'd before this one, and I think he was undefeated, to say the least, and came forward against Jose Delgado, ran forward basically, actually. He was throwing really hard shots for the first 30 seconds, and Jose Delgado just flattened him out cold in the first 30 seconds, and he hit him with a beautiful counter shot. I can see this fight going the exact same way. Maybe not that early into the fight, but I think that Lopes is going to come down guns blazing as per usual and try to catch Gene Silva as he's like leaning away from the combination. I think he's going to fake like a head kick or something. We've seen that Gene Silva's got a similar head kick defense as Rafael Fiziev, where he like matrixes his way out of it. But I think that he's going to like fake head kicks, go for stuff up top, try and get Gene Silva leaning away and try and catch him with a 2 like he caught Volkanovski late in round 2. And whilst he's got a chance of catching him with that, that's kind of the only chance he has of catching him. Whereas Gene Silva can catch him at any point of the fight. He can catch him moving forward. He can catch him on the counter moving backwards. And I think it's just going to be too dangerous for Gene Silva. And I think he's going to finish Diego Lopes late into round 1. I think he's going to time the jab or this 2. All those straight shots are going to start adding up, and he's going to be able to counter over the top, landing a lead counter hook, flatlining Diego Lopes. I'm really hoping he doesn't flatline him because I'm a massive Volk fan. He's probably my favorite fighter of all time, if not top 2, top 3. But I really hope that he can get it done, Diego Lopes, just to keep Gene Silva away from Volk, because I do think Volk is the only guy in featherweight to beat him right now. Let me know what you think of the fight below. Let me know what you think of the whole Noche UFC card below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.